thank you very much to the Institute, Bill, and everybody that's here, all the members, and all of you that found that this would be interesting and to come hear us speak. And it's our honor to be here. It's been our honor to serve our country. I've been in the service for 38 years and 5 months is what I got tallied with for my retirement. I'm officially retired from the United States Army on 1 January of this year. Jim retired 2 years ago with 40 years in the United States Army. And so I've just moved all my stuff to join him in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, which is where he's from, born and raised. And now we start a different chapter of our life. But you never quite leave this. I think there we go. You keep on. Yeah, I think that it's gone. Okay. All right. And, but anyway, I grew up in Denver, Colorado, born and raised to an elementary school teacher is what my mom did. And my dad was a family practice doctor. And I'm the oldest of 4 kids, grew up in sports. And I didn't realize I was born in 1963 by the time I was going through elementary school and those kinds of things that Title IX, where federal funding for women's sports, girls' sports in schools had just started just a couple of years before that. And but I didn't realize that. I was just lucky enough to be able to go and be on the local swim team and grow up through swimming. So swimming was my sport. So I was really an athlete. All 4 of us kids were athletes. And so certainly the being able to grow up as an athlete, I think that set the path or the pattern for, my folks thinking that maybe the service was a good occupation for me at some point. They got me started taking flying lessons and learning how to fly when I was 15. You had to get your pilot's license at 16, your driver's license at 16. And so I did some of the training, turned 16, and then was able to earn the private pilot's license. It's not something they just give to you, of course. And then that really basically started my flying career, so to speak. Sports was a big part of my life. I was an All-American swimmer in high school. I was an All-American in college as well. And but you can't make a life swimming, or a living swimming. So to ROTC, I started off in Air Force ROTC in college, and I did that my first year, and I didn't quite see that as a good fit. But I thought maybe the military was good. I went to the Marines, went to the Navy, went over to the Army, kind of see what they had to offer, and Army it was. And I went into the Army, went to flight school. That was my first assignment, going to Fort Rucker, now Fort Novosel, Alabama, and going to flight school. And then while in flight school, I met Jim. And Jim and I were married a year later. And we have spent, our career has been together as a married couple together, and what we call that is a dual military couple in the United States Army. And I would say that we've been competitive. I apologize, that's my phone, and we have an alarm going off at our house. So it doesn't matter if you turn your phone ringer off, it still rings because that's what the alarm companies do. Everything's fine. We have spent our lives together, our working lives together. We've been stationed, the Army had many years ago. I mean, as you heard, he did 40 years, I was 38 years. We have one daughter. She's 35 years old now. We have a granddaughter as well. She's in 2nd grade, 7 years old. But the Army way back then had a program called the Army Married Couples Program, keeps families stationed together. They put a lot of investment in you to be pilots. That's not cheap. And then the years that you spend. Programs to keep you together. And the likelihood of us being able to reach the highest levels of the military, we were able to do that. And I would say that as we were coming up the whole way through, a lot of people told us that we wouldn't be able to do that. Like, one of you is going to have to get out at some point. You can't make this work, if we got to go to war or something like that. But we were always able to work it out. And we were always able to make things happen. And so I think that just led the competition, the healthy competition between us and just going to different assignments. I would tell you that being a woman in the military compared to Jim, who's kind of a big guy and he's kind of loud and everything, people don't mess with him. He walks in a room and like people are kind of, they kind of go up to him and talk to him a little sheepishly, but me, I'm kind of short, small, people kind of treat me a little bit differently, right? I'm always being tested. And so I just think we made each other better over the years. And he was a little bit ahead of me. He's about 3 years ahead of me. So he learned all, and I learned from all his mistakes as we went through the service. And sometimes I followed him in jobs. And so I think we just kind of made each other better throughout our careers. But we're very proud of the fact that that we have a family, that we stayed married, that we went to combat, both in Afghanistan and Iraq. And we were both able to achieve general officer rank, right? So you can do it. It's hard. Everything's hard, but you can do it. In my last position as yes, so mostly a pilot. And I think too, because we were, sometimes I followed Jim to assignments. Sometimes Jim followed me to assignments. When I worked at the White House for the vice president, I was the vice president's military aide for Al Gore when he was running for president. So it was the last 2 years. Jim had to follow me to Washington, D.C. He wasn't very happy about that, but he had a great job that he ended up doing. But I mean, it was just, we got to do these different jobs that made us not like all the pilots in the Army that just did pilot things, right? We got the opportunity to do other things that I think made us more marketable as we got older, because we had different skill sets other than just being pilots and just staying one track. In my last position, because I know we don't have a lot of time and you all want to ask some questions too, becoming a combatant commander for United States Southern Command. And what that is, what is a combatant command? Department of Defense splits up the globe in 6 geographic areas. And so you have a 4-star general that's in charge of each one of those 6 areas. And so I had the area that actually has from flamingos to penguins. The headquarters was in Miami. And I had Central America, South America, and the Caribbean. And so with the flamingos in Miami to the penguins in Chile or Argentina, all the way down to the tip of South America. And so the Department of Defense does that. And so as we have general officers that are in charge, so I got a question last night at the reception, are there any MacArthurs around in the service? Absolutely. Those are your warfighting commanders, the 6 that have the geographic areas. Those are your 4 stars that all the forces will go under, and they will command and control those forces for the Department of Defense. My boss was Secretary Austin and President Biden. That was my chain of command. And so for 3 years, I did that position, worked the Western Hemisphere. And it was my honor to do so. And I will tell you that in terms of 31 countries, 11 territories and dependencies in the Caribbean, and they want to work with us, the United States. But we were just not there enough. And with the Chinese Belt and Road Initiative always being there and always being available, 22 of the 31 countries had signed on to the Belt and Road Initiative in the Western Hemisphere. I say, and I've been on record in my congressional testimony and many talks that I've done, is that the Chinese are in the red zone for our homeland. And we better wake up and pay attention. This is a call to action. And so I really like what I do see with the new administration and the interest that they're taking with the hemisphere that we all live in, and taking a big interest in what's happening, what has happened, and that we're going to be on the field with our jersey, with our number on, making a difference in our neighborhood with our countries that are our neighbors. And I would say that, just as the viewpoints, we know that the new administration's priorities are border security. We're taking a more American traditional view of Greenland and the Panama Canal, right? Security and trade with Canada and Mexico. That's a big deal. The nominee for Secretary of State, does he have Latin American experience? Absolutely. Cuban immigrant. The Deputy Secretary of State, Chris Landau, was the ambassador to Mexico, U.S. ambassador to Mexico. There's been a Latin American envoy already established. 10 ambassadors in the region, I'm so excited, have already been nominated. I'm really excited about our region because I feel like our region was kind of with all the crises, and there's plenty of blame to go around on both sides of the aisle. But in terms of with all the different crises going on around the globe, Latin America was always, there just really wasn't a lot of, it wasn't a flashpoint. And there aren't a lot of resources to go around for everything. So I am really excited about what I see and what's on the horizon for the region. Now, do I think that this is, our threats are just regional? Absolutely not. You have the axis of aggressors that's happening right now. And we got to wake up and pay attention to that. I think we are. But in terms of what China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea are doing, the collaboration that they're doing together, I think that we, from Richardson's perspective, absolutely need to support Ukraine. Putin, with his imperial aggression, he wants to win. Ukraine it's their survival. Putin will attack other NATO countries if he wins in Ukraine. If Putin is defeated, then that will make China think twice about taking Taiwan. China is on a timeline to achieve being able to take Taiwan with the goals that they have set by 2027. And we have committed to Taiwan. And so I think the last thing that we want is to be in a war with China. And so I think that our absolute support from Richardson's perspective, we need to support Ukraine. We need to make sure that Ukraine's successful. We need to have strong alliances. I do think and absolutely believe in allies and partners and the importance of allies and partners. Their votes matter, their relationships matter, and we're stronger together than we are individually. We need our countries. We need the democratic countries. We have 28 like-minded democracies in the region of the Western Hemisphere. We need to keep it that way, and we need to not let others slip. So I'll let Jim talk a little bit because I've got you maybe all warmed up about some global kinds of things and national security, and but let Jim say some things. He's a combat warrior. And he has some amazing stories and has done amazing things in combat and saved lives. And Dale mentioned that. She wants him to talk about the... We have to wait 1 minute. They're changing microphones. Okay. They're adding a microphone. Okay. It's going to cut out. Okay.
Yeah, this one's working too. You can use both.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. You made a very big mistake. you never put a microphone in a general officer's hands. Okay, because we tend to ramble and we can talk forever, especially when we're talking about ourselves. But I'm Gen Richardson. It's an honor to be here. I'm the other part of Team Richardson. I joined the Army in 1982 at the University of South Carolina, Gamecocks, and started off as an armor officer and then went to flight school and became an attack helicopter pilot. So I flew Cobras and I flew Apache helicopters, flew Apache since the day they came out, and both in peacetime and in wartime. I've commanded soldiers from the platoon to the 4-star level. And it's been an honor to command our nation's soldiers. And we have you have the best military in the world. And today when we talk about the Army, it's your Army. It really is. I've had the opportunity to work, just like Laura has, with some unbelievable people around the world, presidents, you name it. I never in a million years thought that we would be able to do what we've been able to do and the people we've been able to meet over the last 40 years in the Army. I've spent my entire career when I was younger and up to general officer, with our combat forces. And so, spent most of my time in the 101st Airborne Division, where we were always the first to deploy. I've deployed 7 times, spent 7 years in Afghanistan and Iraq. Be more than happy to share any war stories you may ask, but it's been an honor to serve our nation in combat. And I've worked in the Pentagon for 10 years at the strategic level, and I know probably many of you watched the nomination hearing a couple of days ago. So I worked at that level with the Secretary of Defense and Secretary of the Army as advisors to them for a few years. So I spent a lot of my time at the strategic level. My most recent assignment, and I'll just tell you a quick story. When I was a 2-star general, there was this guy named General Milley. You've probably seen him on TV. He was going to be nominated to be the Chief of Staff of the Army. And I was a 2-star general commanding aviation forces. And I got a call from him one day, which is the story's leading to what I did next. I said, Jim, get on an airplane, be at my house tonight. We're having dinner with senators. And I said, sir, it's 1 o'clock in the afternoon. What time's dinner? He said, 6. I said, well, I'm in Alabama. You're in Washington. He said, be here. I was there, and I walked into the room, and it was Senator McCain at the time and Senator Reid. And General Milley's hearing was going to be the next day. And Senator McCain the entire time was telling General Milley how broke the Army was as it relates to acquisition, as it relates to requirements, science and technology, and contracting. And that the Army had not done what the National Defense Authorization of 2016 had done, and that he would not confirm him tomorrow if he didn't pledge to fix it. And he said, Senator, the guy sitting at the end of the table, I am moving him tomorrow to Washington, D.C., and he's going to be in charge of linking and streamlining and fixing this problem that we have. And I looked around at the end of the table, and the only person sitting there was me. And I couldn't believe, you could think what was going through my head at the time. I love being with my soldiers, commanding Army aviation, and now I'm going to the Pentagon to work with a bunch of bureaucrats and trying to streamline acquisition and requirements. And at the end of the dinner, I had one question for him. I said, why me? He goes, why you? Because you're the guy that's been fighting our nation's wars. You're the guy that knows what our soldiers need. And you're the guy that doesn't understand this bureaucracy up here, right? And you'll work directly for me and the Secretary of the Army, and there will be nothing between me and you. And you can do it. I told Laura, and Laura was in D.C., so it was a good thing. Now I get to live with my wife. But I moved. I changed command and moved. came up with a plan. And I saw things were not the way it should be. It took 26 years to get weapon systems in the hands of soldiers. It took 2 years to get a requirements document. So I put a briefing together for the secretary and the chief, and I said, you have two problems. Well, you got a bunch of problems, but two major problems. I said, number one, nobody understands what your priorities are. So when we talk about strategic leadership, we'll talk about priorities. If you have any questions on that. I said, you're 4 stars. Nobody in the Army knows what your priorities are. And it didn't go too well when I said that. And he goes, my 4 stars know exactly what my priorities are. I said, call them. Well, he called everyone, all 10 of his 4 stars, and they all got it wrong. And the next day, guess what? They were all summoned to DC, and I was just a little 2-star, and we wrote all of our modernization priorities for the Army and published them. The other thing that came out is I told the Chief of Staff of the Army, I said, you know, sir, you got a 4-star in charge of requirements in this organization. You got the acquisition community over here in this organization. You got a 4-star in charge of sustainment. It's all stovepiped, right? Where's the 4-star command that integrates and synchronizes across the entire modernization enterprise? I was then tasked to stand up Army Futures Command. And so I thought I was going to retire after that because it didn't go well for me in the Pentagon. I upset a lot of people. They had, there's a bureaucracy. There's the frozen middle. I'm sure you all have dealt with that. And they didn't like it. But we did it anyway. It was the right thing to do. And then I became the Deputy Commanding General of Army Futures Command and then the Commanding General of Army Futures Command. And you'll ask, and I'll get off the stage, but if you ask questions, what is Army Futures Command? What do they do? Think about this. Our job had about 60,000 people in the organization. Our job is to look to the future in 2050, 2060. What is your military going to look like? What are our opposing, our other nations that China, Russia, how are they going to be in? What technologies are they working on? How are they going to fight in 2050 and 2060? How is the United States Army and our DoD forces going to organize in 2050, right? How are we going to equip the force, sustain the force? And so that's what I worked on for 4 years, to present an operational concept to the Secretary of the Army and the Secretary of Defense of how our forces were going to fight in the future, how our forces were going to be organized in the future, how our forces were going to, how we were going to equip our forces for the future. So you can see I had 27,000 scientists that worked for me. And trying to link scientists with warfighters comes from 2 different cultures. That's a challenge. But the 2 of them have to talk. So that was my job for 4 years, for the 4 years I was there in command. And I'm very proud of that command and the work that our people did, because it used to take 2 years to develop a requirement. I want a tank. I want whatever. 2 years. It's amazing the bureaucracy you go through. And we cut that down to 6 weeks. And I know a lot of you are leaders here in the room of companies, right? But we flattened the organization. And General Milley asked me, he goes, Jim, how did you do it? I said, it's real easy, sir. I said, right now, to get a requirement approved, you got to go through the colonel, through the generals, the 1 stars, the 2 stars, the 3 stars, and then they staff it across the Army, and then it comes into you, and 2 years later, you approve a requirement. I said, I only send those requirements to the people who can say yes. I don't care what anybody else says. There's only 10 4 stars in the Army. And that's how we did it. But most importantly, what used to take 20 years to get technology in the hands of our soldiers, we had 7 major weapon systems put in the hands of soldiers in 3 years. And 24 major programs that you probably read about in the papers in the hands of soldiers in 6 years. And it goes back to, why did they pick me? I didn't know anything about these processes. But they picked me because I was on the receiving end of that equipment, and I know how to lead soldiers, and it's about leadership. And so I'll just leave it there. We've talked too long.
I want you to please tell them the story you told me about falling out of an airplane.
Unnecessary.
This is
I spent a lot of time in Afghanistan, right? And, you know, it's about leadership, right? And in the Army, it's not managership, it's leadership, and you lead from the front. You set the example if you're a leader. And you never do anything, you never give your soldiers an order, or Navy SEALs an order, if you haven't done it yourself. And you've got to teach people what right looks like. And I couldn't expect for me when we were in Afghanistan to go out and give the orders for my soldiers, my team, my command, to go out and do missions on the border of Afghanistan and Pakistan, working with the British SAS. You give them an order and I just sit back and watch them. You've got to go out as leaders, set the example, and lead from the front. And there were many missions that we did that way, but the mission that Dale is referring to was a mission that right at the beginning of Afghanistan in 2002, I think I was the aviation commander for Afghanistan. You probably saw us going after Osama bin Laden, going into Tora Bora, etc. We were working a mission on the border, actually going after him that night. We didn't succeed, but we got him later, right? We'd all been shot at, and we were returning home, and what I didn't know was my wingman had taken a lot of bullets to his Apache. And we were returning home, and bottom line is he called Mayday, crashed into a side of a mountain. And it's just the two of us out there in the middle of Afghanistan. And so I circled around, and the Apache was badly destroyed. And I'd had instances before where some of my soldiers had burned in the aircraft, and I didn't want to see that. So the bottom line is in the mountains, we jumped out of the helicopter. I jumped out of the Apache. I'm a big guy for an Apache. If you've seen, it's built for smaller guys. But, and I made a mistake because there's two of us in Apache. My backseater, I said, okay, I'm going to go get him out of the helicopter. And he pulled up to the side of the mountain where the rotor blades were about to hit the mountain. And I jumped out. Well, I jumped out about 50 to 100 feet.
no parachute.
Yeah, I jumped out of the helicopter, rolled down the hill, fractured my back. But I was able to get to that helicopter and pull those two soldiers, those two pilots, out of that aircraft. Both of them had broken backs, compound fractured femurs, etc. And it's probably one of the scariest days of my life, you know. But once I got them out, we had B-1 bomb. We had the Air Force above us. And we had the Air Force, and the Air Force was dropping bombs, you know, danger close to us, destroying the bad guys. The helicopter I jumped out, he'd run out of gas, right? So it wasn't a good situation, but it goes back to you never leave a fallen comrade. That is what, you know, that is what we, you know, we preach to our soldiers every day. And so it was a day that was a tough day for us, but I was proud of what they did. They were proud, you know, they were happy to have me as their leader, setting the example. And we got them out. They're alive today. They're in wheelchairs today. I'll tell you just a little story about them. You remember, and both of them are in wheelchairs today. Remember when in the NFL when they wouldn't stand for the national anthem? And I remember they asked me one of them asked me to come promote him. And our whole unit was there. He was in a wheelchair. And all that was going on. And both those soldiers got out of their wheelchair, stood for the national anthem, shaking all that. That's the kind of people you have in your Army, Navy, Air Force, and Marine Corps. And it's been an honor to serve for the last 40 years in this great country, because we have a great country and we have the best military in the world and we have the best leaders in the world. and it's an honor to be here today. I know a lot of questions are going to be directed towards Laura, but if you want to know anything about the future of where where DoD is going from a technological perspective or how they're going to fight, talk to me. If you want to know about what's going on today, Laura will be happy to answer any questions. But it's an honor to be here with all of you, and I'll stand by for your questions.